Patrick Roy stands as one of hockey's greatest goaltenders, with 4 Stanley Cup championships and 3 Conn Smythe trophies adorning his remarkable career. But behind the pads and mask existed a mental fortress that defined his approach to the game. In a position where a single mistake can decide a game's outcome, Roy mastered not just the physical demand, but the psychological challenges of standing in the crease with the weight of an entire team on his shoulders. Goaltending in hockey presents unique mental challenges unlike any other position in sports. While teammates can make multiple mistakes throughout a game with minimal consequences, a goaltender's single lapse becomes immediately visible on the scoreboard. This unforgiving reality requires extraordinary mental toughness, the ability to maintain focus, confidence, and composure under intense pressure. For 60 minutes, sometimes more, a goaltender must remain perfectly present, forgetting past goals and not worrying about future shots. This mental battle often separates good goaltenders from legendary ones. What made Patrick Roy revolutionary wasn't just his butterfly style that changed how the position was played physically. His psychological approach transformed goaltending on a deeper level. Roy introduced a mindset where confidence bordered on arrogance, where rituals became religion, and where mental preparation received as much attention as physical training. He turned the crease into his personal territory and developed psychological tactics that gave him an edge over shooters before the puck was even dropped. Roy's journey from a young goaltender in Quebec to a Hall of Fame legend reveals how mental toughness can be both innate and developed. His story provides valuable insights into the psychology of excellence, how to handle pressure, overcome setbacks, and maintain unwavering belief in one's abilities even when others doubt. In examining Roy's mental approach, we discover principles that extend beyond hockey, applicable to anyone facing challenges that test their psychological resilience. The story of Patrick Roy is not just about spectacular saves and championship victories. It's about the mind behind the mask, the psychological foundation that allowed a fiery competitor to become the winningest goaltender of his era and change his position forever. His mental toughness became as much his trademark as his butterfly style, creating a legacy that continues to influence goaltenders decades after his retirement. Born in Quebec City in 1965, Patrick Roy's journey to greatness began like many Canadian children, on backyard rinks and in local hockey leagues. Young Patrick wasn't always destined for the net. In fact, he started as a skater before finding his place between the pipes. This transition came partly by chance when his team needed a goaltender, but it revealed something crucial about Roy's personality, a willingness to stand alone, to be different, and to shoulder responsibility that others avoided. From his earliest days as a goaltender, Roy displayed unusual focus for a child. His father, Michel, who coached him in youth hockey, noted how Patrick would analyze his performances, questioning what went wrong on goals and how he could improve. This early self-analysis laid the foundation for his future mental approach. Unlike many young players who simply wanted to have fun, Roy showed an intense desire to master his craft, spending extra time studying professional goalies on television and practicing specific movements. The path wasn't without significant challenges. As a teenager trying to advance in Quebec junior hockey, Roy faced skepticism about his size and style. Scouts and coaches questioned whether he had the physical attributes necessary for high-level success. These doubts became fuel for Roy's competitive fire. He developed an "I'll show you" mentality that would become his trademark throughout his career. When cut from teams or criticized, Roy didn't crumble. He channeled the disappointment into focused determination. Perhaps the most formative experience came during his time with the Granby Bisons in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Despite solid performances, Roy often found himself battling for playing time and respect. Here, he began developing psychological tactics to gain an edge. He started his famous habit of visualization, mentally rehearsing saves and scenarios before games. He also established pre-game routines that bordered on superstition, finding that these rituals gave him a sense of control in the unpredictable world of goaltending. During this period, Roy also began developing the butterfly style that would revolutionize goaltending. This technical innovation wasn't just a physical adaptation, it represented a psychological breakthrough as well. The butterfly approach required absolute commitment to a technique that wasn't yet widely accepted. Roy's willingness to pioneer the style demonstrated his independent thinking and confidence in his own judgment, even when conventional wisdom suggested otherwise. By the time Roy was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens in the 3rd round of the 1984 NHL entry draft, his mental foundation was already taking shape. He had learned to use criticism as motivation, developed techniques to maintain focus, and built routines that strengthened his psychological preparation. These early lessons in mental fortitude would serve him well as he entered the pressure cooker of professional hockey in hockey's most demanding market, Montreal. When Patrick Roy arrived in Montreal as a 20-year-old rookie in 1985, he stepped into hockey's most storied franchise in a city with stratospheric expectations. The Montreal Canadiens weren't just a hockey team. They were an institution with a legacy of 23 Stanley Cups and legendary goaltenders like Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, and Georges Vezina. For a young goaltender, the pressure could be overwhelming. This environment would either crush Roy's confidence or forge it into something unbreakable. Roy's mental makeup was tested immediately. After a solid but unspectacular regular season, head coach Jean Perron made the bold decision to start the rookie in the 1986 playoffs. What followed became the stuff of hockey legend. Roy displayed a poise that defied his age, leading the Canadiens to an unexpected Stanley Cup championship and winning the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. At just 20 years old, Roy had accomplished what many goaltenders never achieve in their entire careers. This early success presented a new psychological challenge, handling achievement and the expectations that followed. Many young athletes crumble under the weight of early triumphs, unable to maintain the hunger and focus that got them there. Roy approached this challenge differently. He viewed his success not as an endpoint but as validation of his methods and a foundation to build upon. Rather than becoming complacent, he became more dedicated to his preparation, more committed to his routines, and more confident in his approach. During his years in Montreal, Roy developed and refined his pre-game rituals that became famous throughout the league. He would skate to the blue line before games and stare down the opposing net. He meticulously arranged his equipment in his locker, following the exact same pattern before each game. On the ice, he would carefully scrape his crease in specific patterns. To outsiders, these might have seemed like quirky superstitions, but for Roy, they served as crucial mental anchoring points, ways to center his mind and prepare for battle ahead. Perhaps most importantly, Roy mastered the goaltender's most essential psychological skill in Montreal, selective memory. The ability to instantly forget goals allowed against him became his signature mental trait. After a goal, television cameras would often catch Roy adjusting his equipment or taking a drink of water, mentally resetting as if the goal had never happened. This wasn't denial but a deliberate psychological technique that prevented one mistake from spiraling into several. The 1993 Stanley Cup run showcased Roy's mental fortitude at its peak. He led the Canadiens to 10 consecutive overtime victories, a record that still stands, demonstrating nerves of steel in hockey's most pressure-filled situations. In overtime, when one mistake ends a game, Roy seemed to find a higher level of focus and calm. He later revealed that he approached these moments with a mindset of embracing the pressure rather than avoiding it. As others tightened up, Roy relaxed, seeing opportunity where others saw only potential failure. By the time Roy had spent a decade in Montreal, he had transformed from a promising young goaltender into a mental fortress. The lessons learned in hockey's most demanding market, handling both success and criticism, developing consistent mental preparation, and mastering emotional control, had equipped him with psychological tools that would serve him throughout his career. However, the greatest test of his mental toughness was yet to come. December 2nd, 1995 marks a defining crisis point in Patrick Roy's career, a moment that would test his mental resilience like never before. During a game against the Detroit Red Wings at the Montreal Forum, Roy was left in net as his team surrendered 9 goals. When he was finally pulled in the second period after allowing 9 goals on 26 shots, Roy skated directly to team president Ronald Corey, who was sitting behind the bench, and declared he had played his last game for Montreal. This public breaking point ended Roy's storied career with the Canadiens and led to his trade to the Colorado Avalanche 4 days later. The dramatic exit from Montreal represented both professional humiliation and personal failure for Roy. He had been the face of hockey's most prestigious franchise, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the team, and now departed under a cloud of controversy. Media and fans alike questioned his temperament and mental stability. Many wondered if Roy's famous competitive fire had finally consumed him. For a player whose identity was so deeply tied to the Canadiens, the separation carried profound psychological weight. What separates champions from others is not the absence of failure, but the response to it. Wall's approach to this career crossroads revealed the true depth of his mental fortitude. Rather than allowing the incident to define him or diminish his confidence, he transformed it into powerful motivation. The perceived rejection became fuel for his competitive engine. In private conversations after the trade, Wall spoke of proving himself again, not with anger but with renewed determination. This ability to reframe adversity as opportunity is a hallmark of elite mental toughness. The trade to Colorado offered Wall a clean slate, but also new challenges. He joined a talented team that had recently relocated from Quebec, but one without the championship pedigree of Montreal. Wall had to establish new routines in unfamiliar surroundings, build relationships with new teammates, and adapt to Western Conference hockey, with its different travel demands and playing styles. Most significantly, he had to rebuild his reputation in the hockey world. Wall approached this transition with remarkable psychological discipline. He avoided public bitterness about Montreal, refusing to engage in back-and-forth media conflicts. Instead, he channeled all his energy into preparation and performance. His work ethic and practice impressed his new Colorado teammates immediately. His focus narrowed to controllable factors: his technique, his preparation, his performance, rather than dwelling on past grievances or external perceptions. The results spoke volumes about Wall's mental resilience. In his first season with Colorado, he led the Avalanche to their first Stanley Cup championship. The image of Wall raising the cup in 1996, just months after the Montreal incident, stands as powerful testimony to his psychological recovery. Perhaps most telling was his performance against Detroit in the Western Conference Finals, the same team against whom he had suffered his Montreal humiliation. Wall outdueled his goaltending rival Mike Vernon, proving his mental wounds had fully healed. This period of Wall's career offered profound lessons in psychological resilience. He demonstrated that even at the highest levels of sport, careers involve setbacks and reinvention. His approach, focusing forward rather than backward, controlling emotions without suppressing competitive fire, and embracing new challenges rather than dwelling on past injuries, exemplifies mental toughness at its most refined. In Colorado, Wall didn't just continue his career, he elevated it, proving that his championship mindset transcended teams, cities, and even personal crises. Patrick Wall's psychological approach to goaltending extended far beyond conventional mental preparation. He developed a unique set of mental techniques that gave him a competitive edge and became part of hockey lore. Perhaps the most famous was his habit of talking to the goalposts, gently tapping them and having what appeared to be conversations with the iron framework. While this might have seemed eccentric to observers, it served a crucial psychological purpose. Wall explained that this ritual helped center his mind and establish his territory in the crease. It was a tangible reminder of his presence and control in his domain. Visualization became a cornerstone of Wall's mental preparation. Before games, he would find a quiet space and mentally rehearse saves, movements, and potential game situations. This wasn't casual daydreaming, but structured mental practice. Wall would visualize not just routine save, but difficult scenarios, odd-man rushes, breakaways, screen shots, mentally rehearsing successful outcomes before physically experiencing them. Neuroscience has since confirmed the value of such visualization, showing that mental rehearsal activates many of the same neural pathways as physical practice. Wall intuitively understood this connection decades before it became common knowledge in sports psychology. Perhaps Wall's most valuable psychological skill was what sports psychologists call selective memory, the ability to immediately forget failures while retaining confidence from successes. After allowing a goal, Wall would often skate to the corner, take a drink of water, and mentally reset. Teammates and coaches noted his remarkable ability to appear completely unfazed after surrendering even the most difficult goals. This wasn't merely stoicism, but a deliberate psychological strategy. Wall understood that dwelling on past mistakes could create a negative spiral affecting future performance. His approach was to acknowledge the goal, extract any useful lesson instantly, then discard the emotional weight completely. As Wall's career progressed in Colorado, his leadership style evolved to influence the entire team's mental approach. He rarely gave long speeches but led through example and selective interventions. When he did speak, teammates listened with rapt attention. Wall understood that confidence is contagious, and his unwavering self-belief spread throughout the locker room. Before big games, he projected calm certainty rather than nervous energy. This emotional steadiness helped teammates regulate their own pregame anxiety and find optimal performance states. Wall's approach to practice revealed another dimension of his championship psychology. He treated practice sessions with the same intensity as playoff games, often becoming visibly upset when scored upon in drills. This wasn't petulance, but rather a refusal to accept anything less than excellence in any context. Wall believed that mental habits formed in practice would emerge under pressure. By demanding perfection from himself in low-stakes environments, he ensured his competitive edge would be automatic when the stakes were highest. The 2001 Stanley Cup run with Colorado perfectly exemplified Wall's championship mindset at its peak. At age 35, with his career achievements already securing him a place among hockey's greatest goaltenders, Wall displayed the hunger of a rookie. The series against New Jersey became a goaltending duel with Martin Brodeur, pitting the established master against the rising star. One not only outplayed his younger counterpart, but also made a statement about mental fortitude transcending physical prime. After the deciding game, Wall revealed that he had visualized a championship moment repeatedly throughout the season, seeing himself raising the cup one final time before the opportunity had even materialized. Wall's championship mindset offers lessons that extend beyond goaltending or even sports. His approaches to visualization, selective memory, territorial confidence, and consistent preparation provide a template for mental excellence applicable to any high-pressure field. What separated Wall wasn't just talent, but a psychological architecture carefully constructed and maintained throughout his career, a mental framework that transformed natural competitive instincts into sustainable championship habits. Statistics tell a compelling story about Patrick Wall's relationship with pressure. In 247 playoff games spanning his career, Wall maintained a 2.30 goals against average and a .918 save percentage, numbers that actually improved upon his regular season statistics. In elimination games, when his team faced playoff extinction, his performance often reached extraordinary levels. During the 1993 Stanley Cup run, Wall posted a perfect 10-0 record in overtime games. The numbers confirm what observers witnessed. Wall didn't just handle pressure. He thrived under it, finding another gear when stakes were highest. The 2001 Stanley Cup Finals against New Jersey epitomized Wall's clutch factor. Trailing in the series 3-2 and facing elimination in Game 6, Wall delivered a shutout performance. Then in Game 7, with everything on the line, he outdueled Martin Brodeur in a 3-1 victory. This performance came at age 35, when many goaltenders had already declined physically. The difference was psychological. Wall's mental approach remained as sharp as ever, allowing him to compensate for any physical limitations with positioning, anticipation, and sheer competitive will. What made Wall's clutch performances so remarkable wasn't just the statistical outcomes, but the moments that defined them. Game 4 of the 1986 Stanley Cup Finals featured the famous wink after robbing Calgary's Doug Gilmour on a point-blank shot. In the 1993 Finals, after Montreal fell behind early in Game 4, Wall made what became known as a save on Los Angeles Kings forward Tomas Sandstrom, preserving a lead that would help secure the cup. The 2001 Finals featured several defining moments, including a spectacular glove save on Patrick Elias in the decisive Game 7. These weren't just athletic feats, but psychological statements. Wall's way of announcing his command of the moment. Wall's approach to pressure situations differed fundamentally from many athletes. While some try to convince themselves that high-stakes moments are just another game, Wall embraced the opposite perspective. He acknowledged the heightened importance of playoff games and elimination scenarios. Rather than pretending pressure didn't exist, he reframed it as opportunity. In interviews, he often spoke about loving these moments, seeing them as chances to prove himself rather than situations to fear. This reframing transformed pressure from a burden into fuel for performance. Coaches and teammates observed a noticeable change in Wall before big games. He became more focused, more deliberate in his movements, and somehow more present. His warm-up routines grew even more methodical. His eyes conveyed an intensity that bordered on predatory. Some opponents reported feeling intimidated by his demeanor before the puck was even dropped. This psychological transformation wasn't accidental, but a deliberate mental shift into what athletes now call the zone, a state of optimal focus where distractions fade and performance flows naturally. Wall's clutch performances weren't just about preventing goals, but about timing. He seemed to have an uncanny sense for the game's pivotal moments, making his most spectacular saves when momentum hung in a balance. The psychological awareness of a game's emotional current allowed him to deliver his best when it mattered most. In close games, teammates described a growing confidence as the stakes increased, knowing Wall would elevate his play accordingly. This created a virtuous cycle where the team played more confidently in front of a goaltender they trusted implicitly in pressure situations. The psychological concept of flow state, where challenge and skill meet in perfect balance, helps explain Waugh's clutch performances. In his most pressure-packed games, Waugh appeared to enter the state more consistently than in routine regular season contests. The heightened challenge seemed to access his full capabilities, creating performances that transcended his everyday level. This explains the statistical anomaly of Waugh actually improving in the playoffs. The increased stakes allowed him to access psychological resources that remained dormant in less challenging situations. Patrick Waugh understood the power of psychological intimidation better than perhaps any goaltender in hockey history. His approach began before puck drop with what players came to call the stare down. During warm-ups, Waugh would often skate to center ice and fix his gaze on opposing goaltender or key shooters. This wasn't mere theatrics, but a deliberate psychological tactic, establishing dominance and planting seeds of doubt in opponents' minds before the battle began. Former NHL players have described feeling Waugh's presence even during routine shooting drills, sensing his intensity from across the ice. Waugh treated his crease as sovereign territory, with clear psychological boundaries. He would meticulously scrape and prepare the ice in his crease before each period, a ritual that served dual purposes, creating optimal playing conditions while sending a message about his territorial control. When players encroached on his space, Waugh responded immediately and forcefully. This wasn't just about protecting himself from interference, but about establishing psychological boundaries. Players learned that entering Waugh's crease meant confrontation, creating hesitation that could make the difference between scoring and missing. Body language became another tool in Waugh's intimidation arsenal. After making a save, particularly a difficult one, Waugh would often exaggerate his movements, a dramatic glove flourish, an emphatic kick save, or a defiant pose. These weren't expressions of arrogance, but calculated psychological messages to shooters. Each save carried subtext: your best isn't good enough. Former NHL forwards have described the deflating feeling of making a perfect shot only to have Waugh not just stop it, but dismiss it with theatrical flair. This psychological warfare accumulated over games and seasons, with some opponents admitting they began aiming for corners too precisely, effectively reducing their scoring chances. Waugh's verbal tactics complemented his physical intimidation. Unlike many goaltenders who remained silent, Waugh engaged in strategic conversation with opponents, officials, and even his own teammates. He would occasionally comment on a shooter's tendencies or remind them of previous failures. During the famous Detroit-Colorado rivalry, Waugh's verbal exchanges with Brendan Shanahan and other Red Wings forward became legendary. These weren't random trash-talking, but targeted psychological probes designed to pull opponents off their game and into emotional reactions that reduced their effectiveness. The famous goaltending duel with Martin Brodeur during the 2001 Stanley Cup Finals showcased Waugh's psychological gamesmanship at its peak. When Brodeur attempted to match Waugh's puck-handling abilities, Waugh responded by making even more aggressive plays with the puck. After Brodeur made a spectacular save, Waugh would answer with an equally impressive stop on the next shift. This wasn't coincidental, but a deliberate psychological statement, a refusal to cede any mental age in the goaltending battle. After the series, Brodeur acknowledged a psychological chess match that had unfolded between the pipes. Perhaps most significantly, Waugh used conflict and confrontation strategically to establish psychological advantage. The 1998 brawl with Detroit, featuring Waugh's fight with goaltender Mike Vernon, wasn't just an emotional outburst but a calculated message to both teams. Similarly, his later fight with Brodeur sent a clear signal that he refused to be intimidated even by elite peers. These confrontations served to energize Waugh's own competitive fire while demonstrating to teammates his absolute commitment to competition. Players reported feeling obligated to match Waugh's intensity after witnessing his willingness to engage in physical confrontation despite his crucial role as goaltender. The cumulative effect of Waugh's intimidation tactics created what psychologists call learned helplessness in some opponents. Certain shooters develop mental blocks when facing Waugh, particularly in playoff situations. Teams would occasionally alter their shooting strategies against Waugh, passing up good shots for perfect ones or aiming for rebounds rather than clean shots. This strategic adaptation represented the ultimate success of Waugh's psychological approach. He had changed opponents' behavior through the sheer force of his mental presence. Patrick Waugh's influence on goaltending extends far beyond his statistical achievements or even his technical innovations. His psychological approach to the position created a template that transformed how future generations approached the mental game. Before Waugh, goaltenders were often viewed as the quirky, isolated figures of hockey, necessary but somewhat separate from the team's competitive core. Waugh changed this perception by demonstrating that goaltenders could be leaders, competitors, and psychological anchors for championship teams. Today's elite goaltenders, from Carey Price to Andrei Vasilevsky, draw from Wall's psychological playbook even if their technical styles differ. The modern goaltending landscape bears Wall's psychological imprint in several important ways. Pre-game routines have become increasingly structured and deliberate, with goaltenders developing personalized rituals that echo Wall's methodical preparation. Mental skills training has become standard for developing goaltenders, with visualization, selective memory, and crease ownership taught alongside technical skills. The emotional engagement Wall brought to the position has become more acceptable and even expected, with goaltenders viewed as emotional barometers for their teams rather than isolated figures. Wall's coaching career with the Colorado Avalanche and Quebec Remparts has allowed him to directly transmit his psychological approach to new generations. Players and goaltenders who worked under Wall consistently highlight his emphasis on mental preparation. He teaches young goaltenders to develop their own psychological systems, not copying his specific methods, but understanding the importance of creating a mental framework that supports performance. This mentorship extends Wall's impact beyond his playing career, creating a lineage of mentally tough goaltenders who understand the psychological dimensions of the position. The psychological principles Wall embodied have applications far beyond hockey or even sports. His approach to managing pressure, embracing it rather than avoiding it, offers valuable lessons for anyone facing high-stakes situations. His selective memory technique provides a template for processing failure productively without being defined by it. His territorial mindset demonstrates the importance of establishing psychological boundaries in any competitive environment. His commitment to preparation shows how mental rehearsal creates confidence that translates to performance. These principles have relevance in business, performing arts, and any field where mental performance impacts outcomes. Perhaps Wall's most significant legacy is how he redefined mental toughness in hockey. Before Wall, mental toughness was often equated with stoicism, hiding emotions and suppressing reactions. Wall showed that true mental toughness involved channeling emotion productively rather than denying them. His passionate displays weren't signs of mental weakness, but expressions of competitive fire properly harnessed. This more nuanced understanding of mental toughness has influenced not just goaltenders but players across all positions, creating space for emotional authenticity alongside psychological discipline. The enduring image of Patrick Wall, hands raised in victory, intense eyes visible through his mask, absolute certainty radiating from his stance, represents more than athletic achievement. It embodies a psychological approach to excellence that transcends his era, his position, and even his sport. In the story of Patrick Wall, we find not just a case study in goaltending evolution, but a masterclass in the psychology of championship performance, how the mind, properly trained and harnessed, can elevate talent into dominance and skill into legacy.